Westfield.
I lied, they're not perfect games, I just couldn't avoid the temptation of flawless alliteration. What do you mean, per games isn't a word? Shush, 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 shush. So the PC had some games on it you may have heard. Great ones. In the mid to late 90s, you also may have heard of something called the PlayStation, Sony's entry to the hardware place, and fair to say, not a PC, but popular. Good games on PC, therefore, were often ported to PS1. Bad ones too, but that's not the point here. I wanted to look at some great PC titles that made the leap to the PS1 and see how they turned out. It's a fun little time capsule, as this was a period before developers really had the hang of making complex control schemes work on a standard controller. With that in mind, I set out to break my thumbs trying to control these beasts. To the listing zone! The PlayStation proved to be a fairly decent home for real-time strategy games, with the likes of Blizzard's Orcs vs People 'em Up having a fine showing for itself on Sony's machine. Alright, so anyone who had played the PC original would immediately fall into a shock coma owing to how much of a chugfest with barely recognisable sprites the PS1 game is compared to in its original form, and that's fair, because this one ran like an absolute dog when there was more than a small amount of stuff going on in a level, requiring you to smash your way through any and all idiots in your way just to get things running at a decent pace again. Oh, and to win, but mainly the frame rate thing. But as with so many PC games on PlayStation, it was in the controls where the real challenge lay for the developers and the players. Warcraft's PlayStation edition didn't have the benefit of an on-screen menu to choose your options, no keyboard shortcuts, no anything beyond a pad with some buttons on it. As such, the game controlled like a bit of a dog, and it was nigh on impossible to respond quickly and efficiently to an incoming orc rush given the all-over-the-placeness of the control scheme. Fortunately, two things. One, as soon as lots was going on, it all slowed down so you had more time to react. And two, if you really put your mind to it, you eventually would get the hang of it. Nowhere near as good as the PC original, sure, but Warcraft 2 worked on PS1 and it was great fun. Especially if you'd only ever heard whispers of the original version rather than, actually playing it. I never quite understood the allure of Diablo when I was wee Ian, which was not a nickname I had at school for peeing myself. No, really it wasn't. Why are you looking at me like that? But Diablo I did not see the appeal of. Turned out the reason for that was because until Diablo 3 came out, I'd only ever played the original, and I'd only ever played that on PlayStation, and that's not the best representation of the skeleton-smashing, loot-grabbing dungeon delver. Kudos where it's due, Climax made Diablo on PlayStation for PlayStation. The difference was direct control which you exercised over your character, meaning rather than the PC's cursor clicks telling your adventurer where to go and rob the next corpse, on PS1 you walked them directly to the grave robbing yourself, and tapped square a lot to attack, so very much tapping. It was the right way to do things and it worked, but honestly, on reflection, it lost a chunk of Diablo's magic somewhere along the way, feeling like a compromised vision of the original as a result of the consoleized port. And let's not forget those loading times between every stinking flaw that would completely ruin your flow and take you out of it. Diablo on PS1 just felt clunky. Not as smooth and straightforward as the PC original, the console game instead played awkwardly and stubbornly refused to let you, even with direct control, feel like you were in full control. It was okay. Fun, even. It maintained a lot of the big-ass hordes that made the original version so hectically brilliant. It was a real, genuine effort at porting a true great to PS1 with care and attention. Can't hold any of that against it. Still wasn't a patch on the PC version though. I'm going to be as efficient and unclunky as possible here and talk about both Enemy Unknown and Terror from the Deep in the same segment, even though both of those games didn't bother with either efficiency or unclunkiness in the slightest, and both were in fact prime examples of PC games ported to PS1 in the sort of way that would entirely put console players off ever bothering with games that weren't run-and-gun platformers or football games. Good crikey, the clunk. So many clunk, so much of clunk. All hail clunk. Both XCOM games, UFO and XCOM really, did one thing very right though: the atmosphere. It was actually something of a calling card for many a PC to PS1 conversion. The move came with the ante upped when it came to music, sound effects and other bits and bobs. With Enemy Unknown and Tuftada, we were introduced to new soundtracks full of ominous, good God so ominous music. And new alien shrieks to send shivers down the spine, just before your soldiers got their spines removed by another bloody chrysalid. Were it not for that atmosphere, ladled on in thick, dolloping spoonfuls atop the already magnificent, but ever so clunky game below, I'm not sure UFO and XCOM would have been so warmly received on PlayStation. They'd just have been games that were hard to control, and hard, and that sounded like DOS games. Or should that be DOS? The atmosphere mattered a hell of a lot, even next to choppy performance, incredibly long load times, and did I mention clunk? Clunk. The music might have saved it here, genuinely. Additionally, both games were able to be controlled with the PlayStation mouse, which of course made both of them closer to the source material and so significantly better to play. It's almost like a mouse as a control method was important to plenty of these games shunted from PC to PS1. Wonder if that'll come up again at all. I can't say this is objective, but then again, this is my channel and my video, so as far as my rules go, this is as objective a statement as could objectively be made. I think Doom's PC to PS1 port is the absolute gold standard. The best of the best. A prime example of absolutely nailing bringing a game from one more powerful platform to another that's just not really suited to running it, or playing it on a controller instead of using a keyboard and mouse. Williams' conversion of its masterpiece was in itself a mini masterpiece, a masterpiece within the original masterpiece, the masterpiece de resistance. No, Doom on PS1 wasn't a perfect like-for-like port of the PC game. It was missing some levels, it didn't have the arch-vile enemy. Graphically, some elements were compromised owing to limited VRAM in the console, apologies for going a bit DF there. It wasn't quite as smooth and snappy as the PC original, and some other bits and bobs. And yet, let's just focus on the arch-vile for a second here. I think that's emblematic of the whole process behind Doom PS1. The devs obviously wanted to include it. It's an enemy in the game, it was mocked up, sound effects were created for this PS1 version of it. But they found it wouldn't work very well on console, given the unit's extra frames of animation compared to other enemies. It would be too much for the PS1, so it would either look like crap or be heavily compromised. And look like crap. So Williams took the tough decision and dropped it entirely, thus showing the team was, from day one, making a game for the PlayStation, and not just trying to cram as much in as possible in an act of artless desperation. This was further proved by the extras, the new levels like Club Doom, which itself was a showcase of another PS1 extra, coloured lighting. Again, it was an atmosphere thing, with lights causing your gun to be bathed in whatever colour they were under and drawing you a bit further into the world of Hell on Earth and Mars. And again, drawing you further in was a new soundtrack, which literally featured crying babies as one of the effects in the background ambience and creeped me out so hard when I was a teenager I still haven't forgotten it. Doom on PS1 wasn't a perfect port in the truest sense, but it was absolutely the best port we could have hoped for, and in its own right, it still stands as one of the best versions of the game. What more can you ask for? Well, you can ask for Quake 2, another id game that received the PS1 port treatment. From the off, it's fair to say this one didn't quite hit the legendary status the Doom port managed, but again it showed a real sympathy for the platform being developed for, and resulted in a game that hit far more times than it missed. And really, it shouldn't have. Quake 2 was way too technologically advanced a game to run on a PS1 with anything approaching this level of quality, yet here we were, playing it, enjoying it. A facsimile rather than a carbon copy, sure, but it worked out. I have to continue the Doom comparison because Doom did so much right in its jump to PlayStation, and Quake 2 tried to follow that same path, but did fall short. It likely didn't help that it wasn't a 3 or so year old game coming to a then new console, rather a 2-year-old game ported to a console that was already old by the time the PC version first released. But hey. Graphically, it was like a low-res version of the PC game with cuts made to factor in the PS1's limited video memory and all that jazz, but yeah, largely a straight-ish port of Quake 2. A couple of things helped the PS1 version stand out though, and while it could never quite be on a par with the PC version, or even close to it, let's be honest, they helped Q2 PS1 carve itself a niche on the Sony machine. First, controls. It wasn't the first game to do it, and I did have to patch it with a hack made in recent years to get them up to modern spec, but Quake 2 did feature a version of twin-stick controls from the outset. That was good. A positive step forward for the FPS on console, and one of the pre-Halo games that helped to define a standard for the future. Second, QuakeStation featured 4-player split screen, and that, friends, was magnificent. Doom did 2 players and needed 2 of everything to do so: consoles, TVs, copies of the game unless you knew how to do the swap trick, which I did, so really I only needed 1 copy of the game. But Quake 2 managed to cram in that 4-player fun on 1 screen with 1 copy of the game, just needing you to have at least some friends, which I used to have when I was young, and it was brilliant for it. Not a legend, no, but a damn fine effort in porting history. Alright, so here's the one where my claim of Doom as the gold standard of PC to PS1 ports might fall apart a bit. Honestly, I hadn't played much, any, of MDK before making this video. I've known about it forever, but for whatever reason it consistently fell through the cracks. An ambitious third-person shooter mixing silliness and sarcasm with intense action and helmet-based sniping. Stop laughing in the back. MDK was made for PC, it needed a PC, and it was way too ambitious and big a game to ever be considered for the lowly PlayStation. So naturally the port, aside from not looking as good as on PC, was pretty much flawless. It included everything from the original: levels, weapons, speed and smoothness, sniping, everything. While Shiny was making the original, Neversoft had been brought in to port MDK to PS1 and was dealing with a constantly changing design to factor in and cram into the console, making it all the more impressive that this was the end result. Neversoft even boasted the PS1 was doing some things the PC couldn't, like true transparencies and using a broader, brighter colour palette. Some people on some forums even said some things about some bonus levels on some PS1, but I haven't verified some of that. Or any of that. It wasn't a miracle, it was just a bunch of very talented people working well together on a project, and it paid off with a port that genuinely didn't seem like it should have been possible at the time. I've nothing much else to add apart from that I really do need to play more MDK because this is very much my jam and I am sad that I've let it pass me by for so long. Next! It's not that Broken Sword controlled poorly in its PlayStation port, it just controlled slowly, and by God, that's a really jarring, irritating thing when you've got limited time and are recording footage of you playing a game for a video and it just won't hurry up. It's fine. Broken Sword on PS1 worked, it ran okay, you just had to contend with a very slow cursor moving around the screen, especially if you forgot there were shortcut buttons available to skip that very same cursor around to your items or topics of conversation, like I did indeed forget. The PC version was home to, as well as mices as standard, overall better, less grainy graphics and a quicker, smoother general experience that didn't come to a halt quite as much when you tried to do anything involving a bespoke animation. Not that it completely took you out of the game when it did that on PS1, but it did almost completely take you out of the game. Back on those controls, you could, of course, again hook up the PlayStation mouse and solve most of the control issues by playing Broken Sword properly in the way it was meant to be played. A point-and-click adventure game with pointing and clicking, it'll never catch on. Just like nobody will ever beat that goat puzzle. If you know, you know. Sidetracked. The PC version was obviously better, but the PS1 came out swinging with this port. A great game, and one that did actually do really well on the Sony machine. There was a point when the MechWarrior series was something to get excited about, no more so than with the second game. Take a flight sim and then switch the flight bit out for Stomp, and you're on the right track. MechWarrior 2 was a simulator of big war robots that was, frankly, thrilling and brilliant. It was also very much a PC game, a sim where manipulating the movement of individual legs and worrying about damaged actuators were legitimate things players encountered. So I was excited and surprised when I heard this one was coming to PlayStation. Not having a PC and being keen on giant stompy robot simulators meant I'd missed out for a while. It was hard not to feel let down with the outcome, being honest. Gone were the majority of the sim elements, replaced instead by a much more straightforward objective and blasting enemies style to things. You still chose your robot, but that was about it for the customization, and while you were able to turn your torso, that was merely a circle strafe aid rather than something adding strategy to what definitely wasn't tactical combat. You just waddled about and blasted things, unlike in the more cerebral PC version of the game. There was a fundamental shallowness to Arcade Combat Edition that left a bit of a sour taste, and the game being neither a proper sim nor a full-on arcade game just left it all feeling a bit directionless. That said, what could Developer Quantum Factory have done? It's not like in-depth sims work well on standard controllers, and it was right of the team to push in the direction of something suitable for the console, even if it didn't work out in the end. Still, maybe this was one that'd have been better off left stuck in PC land. The original Syndicate's console ports were gash. Apart from on 3DO and Jaguar, but given literally zero people in the world, literally, owned either of those consoles, everybody thought the only Syndicate ports to console were terrible. So it was worrying to hear the sequel Syndicate Wars would be coming to PlayStation. Would it be a cut-back version of the game with its cynicism and dark atmosphere torn out? And would you be able to control it without having an aneurysm every time you had to do something beyond walking and shooting? Well, we needn't have worried. Syndicate Wars on PS1 ran at a lower resolution than on PC and saw some levels changed from the original, likely for memory reasons. Some objectives were modified, research was shunted from being something you actively participated in to something that just acted as rewards for completing levels, but generally it was about 90% the exact same game as on PC. I'm not sure if you could actually get the Persuadertron 2, mind. But as has turned up many a time in this list already, the PlayStation version upped the atmosphere ante by introducing much better mood lighting to make it all sexy and alluring, or dank and futuristically depressing depending on which way you butter your bread, or if you have it butterless. I do not spread shame. Alright, yes, Syndicate Wars did have aneurysm-inducing controls on PS1, and it took me a long time to learn all the ins and outs of its stupid, bloody stupid scheme. But I did learn, and it's now muscle memory, so anyone complaining just needs to put in the hours like I did. Or, better, just use the PlayStation mouse, which, would you actually believe it, made things work pretty much how they did on the PC. The best of any and all worlds. It was a fine port, consolified just enough to make it work on the platform without taking away too much of what made it special to begin with, even with its understandable foibles. I really love Syndicate Wars though, so am biased and cannot be trusted. Not again. This is what, the third time I've made myself play Carmageddon on PS1 in the past 12 months? Something like that. Look, Carmageddon on PC was great. Not perfect, rough around the edges, but both spirited in its attitude and genuinely good fun to muck about in. The sequel, even more so. Carmageddon on PS1 was this. It was a blend of the first and second games from PC, with the component parts apparently disassembled and put into a tumble dryer before being reassembled by a lazy macaque with no hands. It's the only explanation. And barring the PC original being a big open world, I cannot think why the developer couldn't actually manage to get it any better than this. It's not like racing couldn't be done on PlayStation, or destruction couldn't be done, or actually thinking about it, it's not like big open 3D worlds couldn't be done in a driving game on PlayStation. Carmageddon was just garbage, a truly awful port and the sort of thing that needs to be stopped. No more on this. Thanks. Here's a bonus. An unreleased game that, according to the bit of Googling I did, according to the in-depth and very careful research I did, got about 95% of its way through development before being cancelled. Yes, it's Baldur's Gate on the PS1. Something a lot of us straight up didn't know existed until the past, decade or so? Something like that. But it's out there, it can be played, and even ignoring the unfinished nature and plethora of bugs popping up every 4 seconds, it's pretty easy to see why this one was cancelled. See, it's not always a bad thing for games to be cancelled, despite what true gamers online would have you think. Sometimes it's a kindness to just prune that bush rather than let it wither on the vine, and I think I got my horticultural metaphors mixed up there. Also, I'm not entirely sure horticulture is what I'm thinking of to begin with. But that's a wild digression. Baldur's Gate on PC was a legend of an RPG, a classic computer game based on a classic pen and paper game, vacuumed up eagerly by a fanbase of terrible nerds like me who needed something to get their digital dragon fix. It's still superb. The original PlayStation version, though, clearly wasn't working out. It looked bad, it controlled awkwardly, and it genuinely would have left a bad impression on console players coming to the series for the first time, so it's 100% understandable why it was canned. On the plus side, the game's cancellation led, I would assume directly, to the creation of the console-specific Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance series, which is fondly remembered by many of us who liked smashing barrels in the early 2000s. Had our first experience of Baldur's on a PlayStation device been the pretty dire port of the first game, we likely wouldn't have even bothered trying Dark Alliance, if it had even been made. So, you know, small mercies. I'd like to offer special thanks to one Sirloin Steak Games for their suggestion of this video. See, I do listen to you people sometimes, especially when they're good ideas I'm into. And thanks as ever to my patrons on Patreon, including this lovely lot from the $5 and above tier. Whereas the special est thanks go to my higher tier supporters. Without their glowing glory, life would not be worth putting up with. Paintball Magazine, PBM. Lola Osman. Takara Hoshi. I'm off to self-flagellate for making myself play Carmageddon on PS1 more than once in a year. Bye!